start with the structure of the course. I think it's important to develop an outline of how you want your course to run and the key tasks that you want to happen, say each week, or if you, well, you need to decide, is it going to be a weekly format? Is it going to be in blocks? Is it going to be in themes? So once you have that established, then you need to decide how you want the teaching to happen within that format. So are there going to be videos? Are there going to be interactive discussions? Having a good sense of what you want to happen in regard to teaching and learning and the interaction you want from students, because I think there's this misconception that in online learning it's sort of one-sided, and I think it's important that students know it's an interactive environment and it's not just post and go. So having that built into the outline of your class and having that mindset as you prepare what you want to do is important.
Doug, do you have anything different perspective?
No, I would underscore that and also underscore how much time that takes to prepare the class well and have it really well structured, to have the Moodle site, developed, because it's hard to develop a Moodle site and get all the bits and pieces together while you're actually teaching it, because teaching it is quite time intensive. Perhaps mostly, I think, because the large majority, or maybe even almost all of the online classes that we have are taught in short sessions. A 3-week winterim or a 5-week summer session, sometimes a little bit longer summer session. I assume that there's some that happen during the regular semester, but not many compared to the classes that happen in those short sessions. So those are quite intense, I'm sure, for the students, but for the professors who are teaching them as well. And boy, you have to have everything together, I think, and a really good plan right from the get-go. And that takes, I don't know, it took me a better part of a year to get everything together.
Yeah.
And then you're sort of revising as you go. So you have everything laid out, and then you realize, I don't know, maybe you get into the second or third class and you have to maybe readjust a little bit. So, I mean, it's always a process. Especially
the first few times through, where everything is set and you're ready to go, and then you find out that, oh my God, that's not working at all. And I mean, I had to totally readjust the first time I taught it, how often I would have tests and how much material, and then that changed an awful lot. So even when you have a plan and everything's really set, you're going to have to be doing some things as you go along. And if you're designing and correcting all at once while you're also teaching, that's just too much.
Right.
You're not going to be able to make it work.
So you both agree that it's best to have it 100% complete before delivery, so you can focus on your role as instructors, focus on the teaching and interaction, and then, as you said, refining and correcting the small things, but never the build-as-you-go approach.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Well, and our campus process kind of has that pretty much built in now, where you have to have it, a certain percentage ready to go by a certain date that gets presented to the distance learning curriculum and advisory committee,
right.
And then 100% by, I can't remember what 1 month out is.
Yeah, 4
like
weeks.
that.
Yeah, 1 month. Yeah.
So that's kind of built into our process, and I'm glad it is. I mean, I was talking to one of my former students who's teaching an online class on hip-hop music and culture, and the way he described the class, it sounds like it is everything that critics say is wrong with online education. And not because the way he's doing it, but this is what the template that he gets handed.
Oh.
And it's not nearly as good as ours, I think, in terms of the approach to teaching and having the Moodle site. They use something else, but be multimedia, and different types of presenting information. Different expectations too, because they have a minimum expectation of 200 people in each online class, and And so that right off the bat is, and we're not talking about having graduate assistants that do, grading. So with that many students, you are pretty much backed into a corner of only doing automated tests that are graded, automatically without any, I assume, significant writing component in the course.
Right.
And I think that's a really bad way of doing online education.
When you started talking about grading, it got me thinking about discussion forums. I teach a literature class during the regular semester, and this semester I have 17 students in that class, which is the most I've ever had in that class. It's usually hovered around 10. So at the end of the week, when the final post date happens, I have like 90 posts I have to read. So it can be a little overwhelming. So I'm already, since I've never had that quantity before, I'm already thinking, okay, next semester I'm gonna have key questioners or critical questioners and have groups of students, which I've never had to do before because I haven't had the number of students to do that. So I'm already thinking, okay, how can I readjust this for more students? So there's discussion forums that are a little more compact and the students are sort of assessing each other, and I can read the end result rather than every single post. And if I need to, if I see that maybe the end discussion is a little off, I can read how the discussion evolved. But putting more of the learning discussion on the students rather than me trying to get in there and respond to everything. I think that's a negative for me, is I want to respond to every student, and when you have 90 posts, that's just really hard to do. So I need to structure that differently for my next semester.
It's interesting. I would think if you were doing that in the classroom, you would never respond to 90
That's
people
right.
in the classroom.
That's right.
Yet online, you're thinking, I need to respond to
That's
90
right.
people in the classroom.
That's right.
So it changes it from a response to everyone to kind of monitoring the discussion, jumping in when you need to.
That's right.
Deciding for me, for instance, I'm usually teaching 2 sections, and it's the music of the Beatles, and it's a popular class, so I have typically over 40 students every time I teach the class. And in a unit, every one of them has to make 2 or 3 discussion forum posts in each of 6 or 7 or 8 discussion questions that I pose. And so I'm getting up into like 300 posts that I have to read in a 4 or 5 day unit, and so it's very intense that way. So at first I was asking to write a little bit more and write a little bit longer in those, and trying to respond to everyone, trying to grade every single one, and that became just untenable. So now I've restructured it where more of their observations in writing happens in formal essays that they have to write about certain Beatles songs, and I let the discussions be just a little bit more free form than I would have had before, and that makes it, I still read every single one, but I don't have to read it as in-depth and give it a grade and all of that, because that was just not working at all for that many students.
Do you assign a grade for the forum participation?
Yes, I do, and I have a rubric that I drew up that's inserted into it's a discussion grade, and it has a rubric, and so I can go through and it says participated in 100% of the questions that I posed in the forum, and the quality of their writing, the mechanics of their, the quality of their writing in their observations, the quality of their observations, and even a few points in there for mechanics of writing, grammar, spelling, punctuation, although I am way more lenient in the discussion sections on that than I am on the essays, where I'm pretty strict. Because that is like a classroom environment. If you had a classroom discussion, you're not correcting their grammar very often when they're asking questions or making comments. On the other hand, I don't want to see LOL, kind of text speak and things like that. And You know, and I prefer if they don't misspell the names of the Beatles themselves.
Right.
You know, that's
So Joanne, go ahead.
I have a question for Romeyn. What do you offer as far as support while these courses are going on, and can you share some of the experiences of helping the online instructors?
The single biggest role for CTS, which is my department, is making sure that the resource, which is the LMS, is available. Mike Phillips does the lion's share, if not all, of the actual end user support. That said, he has to coordinate very closely with us because he's the gateway. Is the problem user error, which sometimes is the problem with the server itself or configuration issue, in which case he as the administrator can very often fix that if it's just a switch or a configuration change. But if he's done all of that and it's still not working, he has to come to us because it's under the hood as if it were a car, and it's our job to work with him to get that fixed, whatever that is, and fixed as quickly as possible. It's an ongoing battle because professors are constantly, and this is a good thing, pushing boundaries, trying new things that they've either discovered in the options or heard about at a conference, and they come back and they try it here. So all of a sudden, this new thing, new to us, is broken or not working to expectation. If only because nobody else has ever pushed that button before. So we have to figure out, okay, if we want to do that, that's a reasonable assumption that button should work. Why doesn't it work? So.
one of the frustrations that I'll share it happens more in winterim than in summer sessions. And that is, the classes are starting either right after Christmas, like in the past, or right before Christmas. That's when people are taking off for holidays and vacations and everything. And so sometimes the resources are not there in the very first part of a online course when you often need them the most. And so, that's, we make it work because I don't think we're gonna have everybody sitting at the phone ready to answer our questions, on Christmas Day or New Year's Day or something. But
that however, is with each passing semester becoming less and less of a valid attitude. You have, as these things become more and more integral to the nature of learning on this campus, you should expect and reasonably expect that level of service is there, and we're coming to grips with that right now. If a physical plant wants to wax the floor in a classroom, they can do that after hours over a weekend because they know there's going to be nobody in that classroom, but we can't ever take the LMS down. I mean, there's no good time to do that because there's somebody online at 3 o'clock doing their homework. That's just the nature of the students. Some professors are online at 3 o'clock grading. You set a maintenance window for 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. thinking that's fine, and you find out somebody set a deadline for midnight for a course submission or a final grade submission. So if you've invalidated that, if the professor said you have until Y and we decide we want to turn it off at X, when can you do that? There is no good time. It's risen to the top of the importance stack as far as the services we offer. Even email and file sharing takes a backseat, to the LMS. If all three are down, the LMS is the thing we're going to fix first. Email will wait.
And particularly, I think during the short sessions, often students will be working full time and trying to take this online class. So 10 o'clock to 1 in the night to 1 in the morning is prime time for them. And if they don't have that time available, they may not be able to meet any deadlines in the day because they, have lives. There's a lot of non-traditional students that take classes as well. And so they have family responsibilities. And so, I'm glad to hear that this is, it has not always been the case, but I think it's more and more important. And I'm glad to hear that we met with previous provosts about this thing, and it was a high priority to her, and so I think it is definitely getting better.
Recognizing that the need is only increasing and it has outpaced our ability to responsibly provide that level of support, not only on the front end, but the back end. It needs to be fully redundant, it needs to be fully patched and up to date. We are actively exploring avenues for outsourcing it, still maintaining an LMS, but at a facility that we would contract with to provide that 24/7 back-end support. So if it goes down, it's only down for a few minutes because the redundant backup comes online automatically, like a generator at your house, that kind of thing. That is being actively explored for multiple fronts.
So Joanne, my question, I was going to ask you, what would you tell a faculty member exploring, if considering, I want to teach online, what is my role as an instructor? What do I do? And you mentioned that sometimes it gets overwhelming, the number of posts to respond to. What would you suggest?
I would tell them, well, think of it as a class that you would teach, say, 3 days a week. And you have to put it into your calendar. These are the blocks of time that you're going to spend online, either planning or evaluating or communicating with the students. So I like to do video intros for when a new unit starts. So my students know, okay, every time a new unit begins, they're going to get to see my face, and how am I going to communicate with them? Is it going to be through the message option within Moodle? Am I going to email them through my BearPaws class list? I personally find it easier to email them through BearPaws because there's a bit of a delay with Moodle. I don't know if you've noticed that the message doesn't go right away. So, and I don't mean that to be a complaint. I just find it the immediacy of the email works better for me. So having the schedule for myself of how I'm going to work with the platform helps me get through it. So if I say, okay, I'm going to have 2-hour blocks, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. An hour that will be reading my forums. The other hour will be looking at the structure of my class. Do I need to readjust anything? Do I need to fix anything for next week? And then communicating with my students. So I actually put that in my planner. So I need that, because if I don't have that, then things get, once you get behind, it's hard to catch up.
Good advice. What would you tell somebody, Doug?
Well, I would tell them that it is definitely more time intensive than teaching a regular in-person class. And some of that, as I said, is that many of us teach it in short sessions. But even then, it just takes more time.
Right. Well, when you teach a class live, sometimes you can pull a feather out of your hat and you can kind of wing it a little bit. And you can't do that in an online class. It all has to be there. It's, and if it's not there, then the students aren't getting what they need. So you really have to have it very, very organized. Yeah.
Can I ask the two of you related to that, as somebody who doesn't teach online or otherwise, do you see that, do you think it's more work because it's dramatically different, or is something that would improve the more you did it? Would it become less work the more often you did it? Or you're someone who's taught online for a while now, so, or is it just always?
Yes, in terms of the design of the course, you find what works and things, and although I have gone back and made major changes, shifting, assigning more essays that I had never done before, which, adds time, a very different kind of grading, although I find that using a rubric really helps with that as well. So yeah, just knowing the nuts and bolts of how to do Moodle certainly helps a lot. It's still more time intensive. I mean, it's a different kind of. That's one of the advantages of online learning, is that you can demand from individual students a level of engagement that is hard to do in person in class. I mean, certainly you can use the Socratic method and just drill each person in the class, but even then you get to 6 people in the class and the other 12 are off the hook for that day, right? Yeah. But you can demand that every single student answer every single question, and you're reading it, and perhaps even other students are reading the answers to these questions. And so that demands a level of intensity from the students, but that also puts a burden on the professor to be able to respond to all of those, instead of just responding to the one person who raises the hand and answers in class and everybody hears the response. Now you have a lot of people that you need to be responding to. And there's just, I suppose one of the things that maybe will change in the future is that there will be more and more students who take online classes. But I would say right now in my classes, the majority, probably the large majority, have never had an online class before. So there's always a certain amount of hand-holding through the learning curve of getting them up and running with the class, kind of explaining how it all works, troubleshooting technical problems that always come up. I'm not sure I ever given a single test where there wasn't one time, where something didn't get submitted that they thought got submitted when they finished the test, or somehow it got submitted early, and I wouldn't be so naive to think all of these that I've encountered are perfectly legitimate, but they come up a lot, and so those kinds of things just require a certain amount of time to, of just typing back and forth emails to make sure that, everything's set, and then sometimes troubleshooting their computer's problems, right, or problems that may have occurred when I did not have Moodle set up exactly the way I thought I did. And that just takes time, and it seems like you might get better at it, but I've done this now, 12 times in this class, and there's just always issues.
I would have to agree with that. You think, okay, now that online education's been around a little bit, that every semester, the students will be more proficient, and that's not the case. And poor Mike, I demand students to bring in other things they do online in the class, like post videos, and if they get stuck, they're contacting Mike, and he's trying to help them upload a video that they created, or a PowerPoint, or pictures, or something. So, and they have to bring in a lot of other technological tools that I require them to use that teachers would use, because I work in teacher preparation. So bringing those together sometimes can be challenging for students who aren't proficient with technology, or sometimes older students as well.
Or students who are using borderline insufficient technology. Yes. I've had students that, with the best of intentions, had computer access when the class began, and halfway through their computer died, yeah, and now they're trying to take the class on their phones. and the mobile version of Moodle is not too bad, and I tried once negotiating around and trying to answer some discussion questions, and that was okay. And iPad is even better, but one of the real problems comes in typing essays and things. This doesn't work, and even the thumbs, and all the weird autocorrects that get in there just doesn't cut it. So, if they had a little Bluetooth keyboard with their iPad or their phone, so much the better. But a lot of them run into problems where their internet connection is just so slow, or their computer is old enough that they're just having problems playing sound files. And in a class about the Beatles, yeah, there's a lot of sound files online that they have to listen to. And if they can't just listen to these songs in real time, I don't know how they're going to pass the class. Or they don't have
the right program to watch a video that, they're unable to view the video that I've posted.
Yeah. So I've got to the point where I have the videos embedded on the page, but I also have, here are the links that you can find just going straight to YouTube, which oftentimes ends up being better for them than the embedded video in Moodle. And other students will think that they'll be able to, satisfactorily complete the class with just spending a couple of hours a day in the public library. Mm-hmm. And boy, it's I feel sorry for the students, but you're going to take an online class, that's not going to be enough.
And I know I articulate in my syllabus You know, the seat time is just like the seat time in the class, and then the amount of hours that you devote to studying for that seat time. You need to do that, and plus some. And the students need to know that. And I've had students tell me, oh, that was, you know, I didn't think it was gonna be that hard. I didn't think it was gonna be that much work. Because they have a perception of what an online class is, and they were not correct with the perception.
Right, they think it's a go at your own pace kind of class,
Right.
number one. So in the syllabus, I always try to make sure that they understand right up front, this is not a go at your own pace
Yeah.
class. There are deadlines and you need
Yeah.
to move on. There is no one particular time where you have to be online,
Right.
you know,
Right.
with everybody else in the class. I don't do that.
It's not a correspondence course.
But it's not a correspondence course, exactly.
Do
And
you have like, okay, everyone needs to answer these questions, say by Wednesday, and then you need to respond to 2 or 3 peers
Yes.
by Saturday?
that's hard in the winter room class.
It
It's
is, yeah.
easier in summer.
Yeah.
But yes, I always make sure also in my syllabus that I say, this is an intense class. It's in bold letters, all caps. This is going to be an intense class. And if you were meeting in a regular bricks and mortar in-person class, in this 5-week summer session, you would expect to spend 3 hours a day in class plus studying. So for this class, you better plan on most days of the week to be spending, you know, at least 4 hours, sometimes more a day on this class. And, you know, I hope they know that up front. I quiz them on the syllabus, so, you know, but I think some people are pretty surprised at that.
I want to jump in here because you mentioned seat time and you mentioned the instructional contact time overall for the students. Turning that around, what I'm hearing is that some things that take an additional amount of time are the troubleshooting, the technical issues. If you could just direct the students to support with any of the technical issues, you don't have to waste that time. So again, you're back to, I'm standing in the classroom. I'll use the analogy of the on-site class. So when you go into the classroom, that's their seat time and your instructional time, where you're engaged with the audience. So email aside, because that's an after-class activity, grading papers is an after-class activity for you. So if you separate the out-of-class or after-class activities, and you don't have to deal with the technical issues, and you only have to deal with your 2.5 hours a week per credit hour over a 15-week semester, to engage with the students in the discussion forums, would that be more manageable? Would that make your lives easier as online instructors?
Yes, if I didn't have the problems solve and, you know, and figure out things that are going wrong, of course.
That kind of part of your earlier question about what takes more time is what got me thinking about this. It was wonderful to hear it unfold the way it did for both of you. And so that's the other question is, would either of you be willing to teach during a full semester? Deliver your online course during a regular semester?
Oh, I already do.
Oh, you sorry.
Well, it's not a matter of willing, it's a matter of what fits into my load.
Right.
You know, I have a very full load teaching guitar students, and I'm able to teach one course a semester, and that is designed as an in-person class, and only in the fall can I teach the Beatles class. I would be open, I suppose, to doing it only as an online class. It alternates semesters where one semester, one fall, it's only for upper division music students because it's a music history class. And then the other fall, it's a gen ed class that gets a C credit. And so it's like every other year, it's like that. But I rather like teaching it in person. Well, I like the variety of doing it in person and also doing it online in the other sessions.
Right. Yeah, when I used to teach my anthropology courses, I'd have an online section and an on-site section, and it's wonderful. But when you're doing both during the same semester, you really get a sense of what's different.
Sure.
Engaging 40 students in the online discussions, or 5 or 6 in the on-site class, because the other students say, oh, I don't know, and you have to move on because you're limited by the clock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, there's all those studies that show that there are people who are more on the introvert side of the spectrum that feel much better participating in an online discussion
That's
than they
exactly
would
right.
be raising their hand and
Yeah.
voicing their opinion in
Yeah.
class. So you're catching a lot of those people
Yeah.
that who would have known have wonderful things to contribute,
Mhm.
but wouldn't have ever thought of saying those in class.
And when my students periodically will have to post a video to the forum rather than just type their initial post. And the most significant piece of feedback that I get from that are the students that say, that makes me so uncomfortable to post myself.
Really?
Yeah, so those are the introverted students that took this class because they didn't want to talk in front of people, and now they have to put this video of them out there, so.
What advantage do you find having them do you're asking them to do the post for a reason? What
Right,
advantage?
it's usually aligned with a task, so it's a adolescent literature and literacy development class that I teach, and one of the assignments is a book talk, and we view a bunch of book talks that are on YouTube, so they have to create their own 2-minute book talk to emulate these book talks they've seen online. And then they have to do another presentation with a video component on how to teach a certain strategy.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
For professors who would like to design their first online course, can you give them some tips and how much time prior to teaching a course would you recommend that they take to design the course? Tips and time.
Well,
I think it helps if you've taught the course before, don't you think, if you've taught it
Yes.
live? So if it's, yeah.
because boy, if you're trying to not only develop the method of delivery of the class, the Moodle shell and all of that itself, but you're also developing brand new content. I don't know how you do it, you know?
Right, so I think, you have the outline or the syllabus from the class that you taught live, and I think go from there and figure out how you want to structure that.
How long would that take, would you say?
I would say 6 months probably.
6 months?
Yeah.
And
Maybe
isn't that part of the
during-
process? As far as the development of an online course, that's part of that process? Or is that more just the actual physical creation of the Moodle course itself?
Course development being part of the distance learning
Mhm.
development, yes, that's part of the process. That usually starts 6 to 9 months, or 9 to 12 months actually, before the target date of delivery.
Right, because if you're gonna offer that course online, it has to get into the calendar, academic calendar, and be in banner and all that kind of stuff, so.
And get approved by
It has to go through all
curriculum
the
committees and
approvals first.
Right.
DLCAC and
Right.
all of those.
On that note, having been through it and having delivered and revised, what would be the ideal development and approval process? Development first, tackle that first, and what can we, the Center for Creative Instruction, provide for you? This would be a pipe dream. Come up with whatever creative, it's in our name. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're already starting with that by the class that you're offering, that you offer on a periodic basis. What's the official title again, Mike?
Pedagogy and Technology of Online Learning.
Right.
Offered every semester, summer, but not interim.
Right, and I think it is really important for anybody teaching an online class to have a sense of what best practices are out in the field of teaching online. I mean, to know, because we don't have to figure this all out
Right.
on our own. I mean, there are lots of people talking about online classes.
Right.
Some things work, some things don't. Some things have already, through academic studies have been shown to be more effective. And so, to get a sense of what those are, I mean, is one thing, that's the pedagogy part, and then there's just the nuts and bolts of how you do it in a specific platform like Moodle.
Right.
And I think you have to have a sense of both. And although, an awful lot of professors on the campus are familiar with Moodle and may have, things that they do in their regular in-person classes with Moodle, that doesn't even come close to the kind of expertise you have to really, design an online class that's effective and easily navigable by students who
Right.
don't have the foggiest idea what they're doing when they first get into this online class.
And I think once you have, when you're creating your online class and you have your skeleton in Moodle, I know you have that pedagogy class, but I almost think it would be beneficial if, like the first time I ran my class or was going through the approval process, rather than communicate via email, to sit down and just talk about it, and say, okay, let's put some bells and whistles to spice this up a little bit.
Mhm.
And just having that actual conversation, I think would help a little bit more.
And you
rather-
know where we're located.
Yes, now, yes.
You can find us now, yeah.
And I know Mike has been very useful and helpful to me
Yeah.
doing that kind of thing. And I know, because I'm serving on it, that the Distance Learning Curriculum and Advisory Committee is also very happy to have somebody from the committee sit down with professors who might say, I've gotten this far, I took Mike's classes, but you've taught a lot of these classes, what do you bring from a slightly different
Yeah.
perspective?
Yeah.
And one of the things, although I want to be clear that although I think it's great to know best practices, there also has to be some room for individual, this is how mine's going to be a little bit different. I'm approaching my online class this way versus this way.
What was your greatest joy on teaching online, your most successful experience that you could share? Could be with a student or a discovery that you found in the way that you presented it.
I don't know.
Which isn't to say there hasn't been one.
There's great discussions that evolve, on whatever the topic is for the week. And, I know I get excited when I see how they evolve. I think, when you put the guideline on of, okay, this is when you need to make your initial posts, this is when you need to make your responses, like the dates for those, you really do see some great discussions evolve with the students, and you can follow their train of thought. But I can't think of just one instance. There's a lot of good things that have happened.
For me, I have thought of something actually. It's when I teach it for non-music majors, getting them to be able to write about music is a process, because it goes along with getting them to listen to music in a very different way. Instead of just having it in the car as they're driving and talking,
Yeah.
or having it on while they're making dinner or vacuuming or whatever, or just partying. It's a different kind of listening. Active listening, and then to be able to write about it in a way that goes, first of all, the first step is to get them to write in a way that's descriptive of what's really going on in the song, because oftentimes even that's a struggle for some of them. And then to get it past that to then, okay, now that we've gone to just description, can we get to the C part in the AC, Gen Ed designator, the critical part? Now that you hear what's going on, how does that stack up to other music? What makes a great song, and luckily we get a whole bunch of those in a Beatles class, but what is it that makes a great song? And to be able to write about it, to hear it, and then to write about it, and then to appreciate that there are things going on in these songs that isn't just run-of-the-mill in pop and rock music. And to get them to that place where they can really write about music in a way that they didn't when they first started the class is one of my greatest things I'm most pleased with. And I have to say, I find that it happens more often in the online class than it does in the in-person class.
Yeah, I like that you brought that up, because I do an assignment. My class is a graduate class for teachers, so they have a piece of literature that they've read, and one of their assignments is they have to create a playlist for a character from the book and why that character would choose those songs. So what's the meaning of those songs? And then they have to create the cover art, and how does the cover art support the character? in the songs that you've chosen. So there's that critical thinking component with that too.
Yeah.
And the goal is, hopefully you'll take this on to your English classroom or whatever, when you become a teacher, so.
So similarly,
Yeah.
one of my assignments that I enjoy the most, and they enjoy the most, and they also hate the most, because it's hard, is the Beatles' White Album is a double album, and yet their producer begged them to cut it down to a single album. Instead of 30 songs, have 14, and have it be one of the really, really great albums of all time. So I tell them, you have to play producer, and you have to cut it down to 14 songs, and for every song on the album, you have to tell me why you're keeping it or why you're giving it the X. And that's hard, but boy, then they really have to start thinking, do I want a different variety of songs on this album? Do I want a theme on this album? Do I want to have representations from each of the 4 Beatles? How am I going to organize this? And then they start thinking about the songs in a much more detailed kind of way, even if they only have to write 3 sentences or 4 sentences about why they keep it and why they don't. And the interesting thing is that many of them will choose to write way more than the required 3 or 4 sentences, and will sometimes give me a paragraph or 2
Yes.
trying to defend their decision.
Yeah.
I say, that's great.
Yeah.
You know, they're really thinking about the aesthetics of the song, and
Right.
yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
So I'm an academic advisor, and I talk to students. One of the things I discuss with them is the possibility of taking an online class. Sometimes that helps them with their schedule and so forth. And I tend to find that I get one of 2 reactions. I get, I would never take an online class, or I love taking online classes. So there seems to be a very kind of polarized thing happening where nobody has a neutral experience with an online class. They all have a very strong feeling about it, and I'm interested as instructors in that environment, if you have, first of all, do you encounter or do people identify themselves to you in that way? Do they right up front say, okay, I'm signed up for your online class, but I'm not an online class person, or and if they do that, or if you detect that, how do you work with that, and maybe how do you try to kind of make a better experience for them? Or if you have thoughts about why they have that kind of polarizing experience, and what we can, as an institution, what we can do about it to try to make it better for them.
My daughter was a student here and finished with her bachelor's degree, summa cum laude. Took one online class over winterim, and I won't tell you what department or who taught it, but she hated it. And she said, and this is somebody who really likes learning, she said it sucked all the joy out of learning. And
Difference between an e-book and a regular book seems, I've encountered similar polarization.
well, in the polarization, yes, but so I thought a lot about that, because what is it that made that class really horrible? And I didn't, peek over her shoulder or log in for her to see how that other person had the class structured. And she knew that I taught online classes.
Yeah.
But I think when her objection was that it had really the way it was set up, it had very little human interaction. And that's not to say, she knew going in there wouldn't be any in-person human interaction, but there just wasn't much. She would submit an assignment, it would pop back with a grade, a numerical grade, maybe a couple of comments. It didn't have any real kind of interaction. And so I've kept that in mind as I've, taught classes. It's a little frustrating trying to get feedback from students about how they respond to my class. I hope mine isn't one of those that they say that. And the way that the course evaluations are set up, the percentage rate of responses is very small. Then I can say, and please, before you finish and take your final exam and log in for the last time, please make sure you fill out a course evaluation, an online course evaluation. It's very, very helpful to me. But the percentage of students in the class that do fill them out is low. And I suspect that although my course evaluations for the class are pretty good, maybe the ones who hated it most haven't filled them out because they don't want to spend another moment online with dealing with thinking about this class. I don't know. So I think the professor teaching has a lot of control over what that experience is.
Do you have strategies for kind of injecting more of yourself, more of your personality into the interface so that they come away with a better sense of who you are and a more positive?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of that happens in the discussion sections. I don't tend to post videos of myself lecturing or anything like that. I am not a big fan of, I think that starts to get a little bit into the correspondence school kind of thing, where you just watch a professor lecture on a video and then you take the test or something, read the book and take the test.
Right.
So I do tend to do it some different ways, but that is one of the things that is on my agenda when I get a little bit more time to maybe try to experiment with, once the deadline is passed for their discussion posts. I mean, I've been typing in and responding to the discussions as we go along, but often I'll have like one summative summary of ideas bring in all the ideas, or present some material that nobody managed to bring up in the discussions up until then, but that I still want them to have. And that might be a good place to then, post a video of my responses to those discussions. But I have not done that yet.
Right. The concept of having the instructor involvement is called teaching presence or teacher presence. And studies have shown that the more you're there and responding and interacting, the more successful and satisfying an educational experience it is for the students. So as you said, and you may have heard, Peter, from the students that are opposed to online learning, they take one course. It's a bad course that has no interaction or very little, no feedback, and it colors their perception of the whole online realm.
I know I'm not on the panel, but I'd like to say something too about this teacher interaction. When I was teaching an online course, I also posted at the top of the course, that's not my phone.
It's going to
bounce around to all the phones in the office before.
I posted times where they could actually go into a chat room with me and talk about the issues that were assigned that week. And I found that ones who came into the chat room, and it was just optional because you can't make it mandatory that they are present at that time, those are the ones that gave the highest feedback for the course, because you got to know the students through a chat room and typing back and forth, and it was a positive experience for them. So I think that's another way to bring that teacher interaction by just offering a time for a chat room for them to come and chat and talk about the issues in the course.
even online office hours.
Right, online office hours. Mhm.
A follow-up to the original question, do you see a shift in the polarization as each year goes by and a new class comes in? Are the newer students more familiar with online and more liking it, or is it pretty consistent?
Yeah, I don't have a good sense of that. My sample's too small, and recently I've been working mostly with freshmen, so they're high school students who are just coming into college, so a lot of them haven't ever taken an online course yet. Though, interesting to point out, they still have an opinion about it. So, but that speaks to kind of the reputation that online learning has and what they imagine, because sometimes if I ask them, if they say, well, I would never take an online course, even if they've never taken one, if I ask them why, they have feelings about what they think it's going to be and how they feel about themselves as learners and the way that those would match up. So whether or not that's a realistic expectation, may differ course by course, but they already, even beforehand, they already have a feeling that they either do or don't like the idea of taking an online course. And I suspect too that the people who you get signing up for your courses are mostly people who have decided that it's going to be okay. And the ones who say to me, I would never take an online course, you're never going to meet them because they're just not going to sign up for an online course.
Unless they need to get that one gen ed in before they
Yeah.
I mean, that's why they take them. Is who wants to spend this 5 weeks in the summer taking a class? We've been doing that for 30 weeks all school.
My advisees would never find himself in that situation.
So a lot of the students that end up in my classes, do that. But think about what are the kinds of online classes that make the news. It's these big things, big initiatives by Stanford and other places.
Yeah.
What do they call it? MOOCs. And these big, massive online classes with thousands of people in them. And that's kind of what gets into the popular image of what this is. I know the campus kind of made a decision to, yes, we have these online classes in the summer and winter and even during the school year. Do we want to market these out to the world, kind of like SUNY Canton is doing, where anybody all over the country can take them? And I have had a student or two that have taken it, that way. But I'm glad the campus has pretty much decided, no, that's not really where we want to go. We want them to serve our students. If we get a few other, because you could get a lot of people who are only looking for the tuition dollars that they would bring in from those kind of classes. But
Is that the case with graduate classes though? Because my graduate class that I'm teaching right now, I have people from all over the state taking it.
Well, yeah, we do advertise with Open SUNY, so anybody throughout SUNY can take our online courses.
well, very few are finding mine, and that's fine because it's already very popular, and I couldn't handle any more students anyway. But it's nice, but I'll bet you that even though there's students from all over the state, they're not changing the cap on the enrollment, right? That's
No,
still a
it's
reasonably low thing. So it may not be just our students, but it is a very reasonable number of students to teach in an online class.
And there's a purpose, so like, I need your class to get this certification.
Right.
Okay.
Sure.
So,
Sure,
Yeah.
compared to those big, massive online classes where they find that what's the percentage, 7% complete the class, and of that 7, only half of them pass.
Right.
You understand, that's thrown out, you understand why that is, right? The MOOCs, massive open online courses, thousands, tens of thousands of students enroll, they're free, and they're non-credit, and there's no interaction with the instructor. So some are professionally designed that are fantastic. I played guitar for over 30 years, but I took beginning guitar. And this is from the Berklee School of Music, and it was actually fantastic. The videos, the instruction, it was wonderfully done, but it was peer evaluation. So you get hundreds of people or thousands of people that sign up and drop, but I'm part of the statistics. Mike only lasted 4 out of the 5 weeks. So you have this huge percentage of people that enroll and only 7 to 10% complete. But the naysayers use that.
Yes.
Yeah. And as you said, some students will take a MOOC and think that's the experience of a real online course, and it's not.
That's right.
What you two have outlined that you do, you're involved, you're present, you're engaged with your students, those are commendable characteristics and behaviors that you do, and you need to lead the charge on our campus to improve it, because we have some, as you said, who get past the DL committee, the approval, and then they just do what they want to do, and it gives it a bad, leaves it bad.
Yeah, and then people point back to it and say, you see, that's everything that's bad about distance learning.
Yes.
And so it's one of the reasons why I'm glad we have this process of curriculum approval, and so that, we do it right. And, sure, there's still going to be an occasional, class or professor who's not quite as diligent. It happens, but as it does with in-person classes. But I think most of the people that I know who teach online classes are very serious and
Good.
and work real hard at it.
We're over time. Any final thoughts or questions?
Well, I was just going to say, in listening to each of you speak about this, that I wonder too about how, if there's a way to account for the type of student who might be taking the class, because the sophomore who signs up for the Beatles class and the in-service teacher who signs up for the graduate education course are going to be very differently equipped to succeed in an online course environment. The only online teaching I've done was with in-service teachers, and so they were very self-motivated, self-organized, mentored one another. I mean, I found it quite joyful to be involved with because they were doing everything that I would have wanted a class to do with very little time from me. Whereas a class of freshmen, you might have to structure a very different kind of level of interactivity to keep them involved and engaged because of where they are in the learning process. So in the process of approving these courses, is there consideration given to who it is that we expect to take them, and are there different kinds of criteria that we might apply? I don't know if we have time to answer that question, but it's one I wanted to throw out there.
No. I mean, no, we don't do that right now. It's pretty much the same criteria for all the classes, and I'm not sure, I mean, if it's all that necessary. I mean, a good online class is set up in a way that it's going to work for everybody, you know, and even for students who've had online classes who are, you know, post-baccalaureate, you know, even maybe post-master's degree, post-certificate for teachers or something like that, you still need to have the same kind of Moodle site that's easy to follow, that's straightforward, and those other things are just, you know, how you set them up for grad students. That's just a little bit of a local difference, I think.
Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing your ideas and experiences with online learning. And if you want to find out more about how to design your own online course or to actually start teaching an online course, come to the Center for Creative Instruction and see Mike Phillips. And we also have some books and literature that you can use to help you get started. And thank you very much.
Thank you.